Hi, I'm Alicia. This is Unencumbered. This is part 2 of the Healing from Heartbreak video. In the first video, I talked more about general advice on how to deal with heartbreak and just what to do when you feel like everything's happening. You're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And I try to give some really practical tips. And so as promised in that first video, I wanted to share some journal entries from my experience in heartbreak because I think it can be helpful when you journal, is that you can see, this is how I felt this month, this is how I felt this month, and then this is how I feel now. And so I just wanted to spend some time just kind of looking over those journal entries. If you're experiencing heartbreak right now, I hope that they can be relatable. If you're kind of finding your way out, maybe these will seem really dramatic to you, but I was in my feelings and I felt this way. So I just want you to feel that you're heard. I know what it feels like. I'm here with you. And we can experience it and go through the journal and just see how I felt at different points. So this is a poem I wrote called Mounting Over Me. And this was, I would say maybe a few months after my first breakup. Mounting over me. I don't like that you have power over me. Manipulate my emotions like a marionette. Missing you mounts highest on my to-do list. I want your warmth, your laugh. I want to rub your back, your shoulders, every holder of stress because your tension uneases me. You hold it on your face, at the collapse of your body at my waist, you say, this is too much. You were overwhelmed and I needed security. Managing a relationship with too much ambiguity. What do we deserve? Love, commitment, not questioning, the essence of every embrace. Foot washing and string art that breaks, beliefs on both sides. The newness of love and heartbreak. So sudden but hidden, time wasted, future shifted, love. Tired of believing in what never existed. So that was definitely a dramatic poem. There are details in there that are definitely specific to that situation, but I think it was helpful for me to write that down in that time because I was feeling like so basically what happened in that relationship is that we believed basically fundamentally different things when it came to faith. And we would constantly have conversations about it, and it got to the point where it's like, are conversations even worth it at this point? Is it just the fact that we're just not on the same page and it needs to end? So then I just will constantly think about it, and I'm like, well, maybe I should have, done more. I still miss this person. I miss all the good things in a relationship that we talked about in the first video. You miss all those things. But then I was thinking so that individual stress from not knowing if the relationship was right was uneasy to me. And I'm like, I can't be in that. But then I'm still missing it. So it was trying to kind of figure out how to balance both of those things. And also with the whole future shifted, I had an idea with this person, what my future was going to look like. But now that that's no longer the case, the future is different. And then also just the idea that I just got a little cynical about love. Like what was the point of going through that situation when it didn't end and it didn't end how I thought it was going to end. So that was a little bit about that first poem. And now to the second one. I prefer for people to walk quickly out of my life, not slowly dissipate until I forget the comfort of their daily messages. It's easier to have that quick, okay, it's done, versus having that feeling where it's like, we're going to pretend that we can be friends after this, and then we just slowly stop talking to each other. So that was just kind of me voicing that frustration. Let the calendars keep flipping, the clocks keep ticking, because it's not in my interest to acknowledge time as precious. I don't want to be heartbroken. It's a declaration I can't fathom. Catharsis I'm not willing to travel. Emotions are hopeless reminders of what could have, should have, isn't. Let me find peace and sleep. But dreams are wicked indicators that past hopes are current. Waves of confusion, illusions. Walking on water, waiting for Jesus to calm the sea, to see me. In that poem, I just want to really get back to that idea that we always say after a breakup, it's gonna take time to heal, time, just give yourself time. And I do, that's true. Time is definitely helpful, and yes, we understand that. But I was getting frustrated because I'm like, why am I still into this? Why am I still having emotions when it comes to this person? I want to be over it. I want to be over this situation. I want to move on. But I would keep having dreams, and I'm like, I have lots and lots of dreams, very interesting dreams. And so I'm like, so I would overthink the meaning of them, and I'm like I'm trying to keep going. I was like, come on, I'm ready to get over this, ready to move on. see what life has for me. And so that poem was to me just saying, like, I just want the calendar to keep going. Like, I just want time to just fly, because I'm like, I don't want to be in this situation anymore. Like, I'm tired of dealing with this. And I remember looking up, there's some site, it's like, how long does it take you to get over a breakup? It's like half of however long you were in the relationship. You know, so 1 year, 6 months, it'll take you to get over it, something like that. And of course, that's like an arbitrary number. But I can't remember. I'm like, okay, I'm on month 5, like, ready to be done with this. And that just wasn't the case. That poem was me just being like, I want to be over this, and I want to be seen, and like, God, like, Jesus, come on, like, I'm ready, I'm done. I'm like, ready to move on. So that was just kind of my heart in that poem. So now that we've gone through the poetry, I'm going to get into some actual journal entries. I need discussion, I need communication, I need wokeness. I can't settle for less, I won't settle for less. I often make declarations like that in my journal because I think it's important to be able to go back and say, this is what you said you wanted, and this is what you were declaring over this situation, so are you keeping up with it? I cry for me, I cry for him. I want to be his peace, but not at the expense of my own. I deserve to be treated with the utmost respect and loyalty. Kind of continuing on that line, like, there's a problem here in this relationship. And so, documenting it. 2 months later, in May, I actually, in the journal, talk about how I feel like I'm so in love, I'm like giddy, things are great, I'm so excited that this relationship is in my life. So I say that in May, and the relationship actually ended in August. Too much investment, too much love, too much sincerity, too much vulnerability. So I end that journal entry with that kind of declaration that I can't believe that this is over. I've put so much into it, but that's what's happening. And so I would say that began the like struggle to kind of get it back. And definitely in the beginning of it ending, I really wanted to do all I could to get it back. And so one of these other journal entries, I'm talking about how I feel like I put so much pressure on my ability to dust myself off and keep it moving.
You heard we broke up. Nah, she broke. I'm up.
And then I just thought, and I reflect a little bit more about how I felt like I was meant to be there for him. I thought I was supposed to be that support for this person. And so to not be in contact with him, it was like, but that's like my job, my duty, whatever you want to say, is to be helpful to this person. And so that's a whole other thing. But I was dealing with that, like feeling that I needed to be there for them. So then I actually texted a friend who knew him, and she basically said to me, and she quotes 1 Corinthians, and she says to me that, you know, it's very rare that we actually get to see someone through their whole, basically like transformation, I guess you would say. And so for me, I was like, I'm there to support him, and I'm supposed to see him from where he is and the issues that we have. Like, we're supposed to like come out of this, and we're supposed to be different people after this. And honestly, my hope was that I could convince him of my beliefs and that was going to be enough. And so in that conversation, she's like, that's not usually what happens. Usually, you know, you can be the person that has planted the seed, but someone else is gonna water. It's not for you to stay here and water it, you know, and like put that investment into it. And so I was like, okay, like that was a fair, helpful illustration. But then in my head also, from where I was in that time, I was like, well, maybe, you know, I won't be the person that waters it, but I'll like come back in time to like see the plant, you know? So that didn't end up happening, of course, but I think it was helpful that she pointed that out to me. And I think that's another helpful thing to think about when it comes to breakups, is that you might not be the person to see them all the way through. You might be just one part of that person's journey. Coming back to the Maya Angelou quote, they might come back and say, I will never forget the way they made me feel, you know, or, you know, in a positive, hopefully in a positive way, that they will never forget how you made them feel, and that they'll never forget the lessons that they learned. Because I think there are times when people say, you let a good one go or something like that. And it's like, no, you learned a lesson, and you learned about what you should value in relationships, and that's how it is, and that's how it's going to be. So sometimes you plant, sometimes you water, and sometimes and also with that, sometimes you're not going to see the plant grow, and it's okay. It's okay that you're not going to see the plant grow, because there are other beautiful and lovely things in your life, and sometimes that's just not one of the things that you get to experience with that person. I'm angry because I feel like a failure. I tried so hard to make it work, and it didn't. I gave it my all, Why? How? And to think that a couple that we used to double date with is now engaged. God, that hurts. Why would you let me believe that there was a future in this relationship, God, if there wasn't? So clearly in that excerpt, I'm really just being honest about how it feels when basically someone you thought you had a future with, that future doesn't end up happening, and then you see someone else enjoy that future that you thought you were gonna have. And so that's something I was like reflecting on, this whole idea that I had to be honest with God. Like, that's frustrating that I was hanging out with this couple and then they're engaged and I'm sitting here like, when's that gonna happen for me? Now this is an excerpt from a letter that I never sent, but I did write it and look over it a bunch of times and constantly like thought about sending it. And this was actually a letter I wrote towards the beginning of quarantine. So this was like March-ish time. So like very early on in this whole situation that we're in. So it's very, very early on in this whole situation that we're in. And I wrote this letter because this is how I was feeling. My honest hope is that we will work out. That distance and any other factor won't have the deciding word on our love. We will. I saw the movie The Photograph, and the movie ends with the couple agreeing that they would make their long-distance relationship work. In the movie, he moves to London, and she is in New York. Issa Rae's character says, "I don't want practical, I want you." I know it's a movie, but it expresses how I feel. When we first split, I accepted practical, and even began to make my peace with it. I thought many times about how you will receive this letter. Will it sound desperate, annoying? Will it be too much? I'm a dreamer who dives into things full of emotion. To me, love is sacrificial, powerful, and conquers all. It feels foolish to let a love so deep, so beautiful, so enjoyable slip through my fingers. I never did end up sending that letter, but it was important for me to express those emotions and just really trying to figure out like how I felt. And it was really difficult in that because after that breakup, one of the conversations we had as like, okay, we had this conversation about breaking up. Okay, let's have like an aftermath conversation. I remember in the aftermath conversation, I was so frustrated because I'm like, I'm pouring my heart out to you and you're just kind of like, oh, I just think it's for the best. And it was just like very practical. And I'm like, I can be practical. I can be practical, but I'm just like very passionate, I guess you could say, in like a positive way. Instead of like saying emotional, we're gonna say passionate. So I'm very passionate. So I'm like, why aren't you telling me how you feel? And like, at least letting me know that the time that we spent together wasn't just fake, you know, and that it was actually love. And so that was like, I was trying to express that frustration, like at least let me feel like what I was experiencing was real and it wasn't like fake. And so honestly with this video, what I wanted to show is that throughout the journal entries and the poems and all these things that I wrote, they were in a space and in a time when I was feeling very, very deep sadness, disappointment, deep frustration with my situation with heartbreak. And now when I reflect on those experiences, I think I'm no longer there. I no longer feel that sadness. I look at those and I kind of laugh at some of them. I'm like, oh my God, that's so dramatic. But also like I understand why I was feeling that way. I understand why it was so difficult for me to move on from some of those situations because I was getting so attached to them. So in the previous video, I talked about how the dopamine, the pleasure center in the brain, like when we contact someone who's our ex and they, you know, provide us with all these great emotional feelings and happiness and etc. When we contact them and they respond, we're going to keep craving that from them and hoping that it'll kind of come back to a relationship. And so I remember going through that period of time where I would write these I miss you letters and journal entries and poems, and then I would go back to the person and message them like, this is how I'm feeling, I need clarity, I need conversation. And then when I wouldn't get that, it was affecting my dopamine. You know, I wasn't feeling happy because I wasn't getting what I was craving from this individual. So in order to really heal from that heartbreak, I needed to take control of that and say that I'm going to find pleasure in various things of my life. It's not just going to be a romantic relationship. After the heartbreak, what that really means is that those emotions that you felt, those deep negative emotions that you felt, there is space after that where you will not feel those same emotions. And it doesn't mean that's going to be an easy process to get to the after the heartbreak, but it's a process that you can do. And if you ask me when I was in the midst of that, dealing with the different breakups, I'm like, I obviously know I can get through it, but it's rough. It's rough, and it can seem like so consuming of your life, especially if you're someone like me who is more passionate of a person and you take love very seriously. Then it is difficult. I just want to encourage you to spend time, love on yourself today. I know when we think of Valentine's Day, we think of, romantic love, and honestly, like, Valentine's Day is a commercial holiday. Like, it's not anything significant to celebrate. But if you celebrate that, that's wonderful. Find reasons to celebrate. If that's good for your relationship, great for you, wonderful. I just want to say that you don't need to have a Valentine. Like, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. And there's so many lovely things in your life, and I just hope that you can reflect on those things. In the comments, let me know what you think of these poems and journal entries. If you related to any of them, feel free to put that down there. If you want to share some of your experiences, let's just have a good conversation. Let's just talk, It doesn't have to be anything serious. If you just want to jot something down, maybe talk about how you feel about Valentine's Day. Do you celebrate? Do you care to celebrate? So just let me know in the comments. As always, you are loved and affirmed. Stay unencumbered.